So, today we have the wonderful Alister Walker from Walker's Shortbread in Scotland with us for the podcast. Thought he was quite an important guest because massive company worldwide, and it's a family business, and I thought that there was some great things to learn. So, welcome, Alister.
Thanks, Callum. Nice to see you.
And you. So, we first met in Japan, of all places, at Hankyu department store, doing the British Fair, of all places. You had a massive queue with your shortbread, and I had a massive queue with the fish and chips. And it's quite a strange place to meet. And I don't think people realise how worldwide your shortbread is. But can we go to, how did the company start?
Sure. It's hard to believe that was when we met because, yeah, you're right. Bumping into each other or meeting in Japan, I think was an amazing experience, but also we were both going through the same thing. So it was nice to have each other to bounce off and kind of process the craziness of Japan for a week. Anyway, just a brief history on Walkers. It was started in 1898 by my great-grandfather, Joseph Walker. So we're actually celebrating our 125th anniversary this year. So we're very proud to have reached that milestone. He set up the bakery in Torfins, so not too far away from Aberdeen. And that's really with a very small loan and got kind of just a small baker. So he wasn't really making shortbread in great amounts at that point. It was just a kind of village bakery. And he was a kind of great baker, but maybe not the best businessman. But managed to kind of get by and was kind of known for his quality. And it wasn't sort of until about 1916 he moved to Aberlour, which is where we're still based today. And kind of did that because he saw Aberlour with a bigger population than Torfins. So Aberlour has 1,000 people. So you can imagine what Torfins must have been like back in the day. I mean, but actually that was an amazing accomplishment at that point to kind of have the foresight to go, right, let's go somewhere else. I think there's maybe more to do. More opportunity. So we did that, and then we have this sort of we call it a sort of slightly quieter period in our history, where nothing really much happened, but we survived 2 world wars. So actually, that generation, the second generation that came into the business, deserve almost all the accolade because they kept us going through the most difficult time in our history so far. Then after that, after the war, once things had kind of opened up again, my father, my Uncle Joe, and my Aunt Marjorie came into the business. They were all quite young at this point, and kind of given the reins almost to kind of say, you know what, you guys are young, you're hungry, why don't you go out and see what you can do with this one village bakery? So at that point, it was about a turnover of £40,000, 16 people. So quite, again, just servicing the local area in Aberlour. And through that generation, they really kind of saw shortbread. It became clear that shortbread was like one of our main products, was something that we had kind of stayed true to that original recipe. So if you go back after the war, a lot of people started using margarine because they couldn't get butter. And then they stayed with margarine because of the cost. But we kind of went back to the original recipe and thought, it has to be about butter. We used that traditional method that we kind of had perfected. And then the company kind of explodes from there. It was a kind of focusing on shortbread, traveled internationally to kind of open up new markets, really kind of put a focus on it and focusing on what the customer wanted. And then kind of it just sort of grew from there. And we kind of built our first factory in the 70s, and then another 3 sort of followed in quick succession. So we kind of going back to what the third generation kind of did. At that point, it was 14 employees. We probably have about 1,500 employees now. We had a turnover of £40,000, and we're about 140 million now. So we were around for 125 years. The last 60 have been the kind of where the growth has come, but almost the praise should, in a way, also be quite should be given to that second generation to get through a very difficult time in the company history. And now we're still 100% family.
Yeah, because they had to get the grit.
Yeah, and
they had to get through the grit of it to keep it going. Yeah,
exactly. And not having the ingredients or the the money to kind of put into different products. It was all about rations, making bread that didn't have really much taste to it and was just what people could afford and what we could produce. So it was an amazing kind of time, and we don't talk about that time enough, but it's a really important part of our history. And today we're still 100% family owned and run. There are 7 family members actively working in the business today. I'm 4th generation. We have 5th generation working in the business, and we have 6th generation running around. So they're very small. But so it's amazing to think that whilst we are kind of a worldwide brand, that we are still family owned. We're not a big conglomerate owned by Mondelez or Ferrero. We're just very much a family business, and we're going to keep it that way as long as we can. It's a big draw for us, and I think it's about us explaining that story, because I don't necessarily think that everyone around the world knows the Walker story, and we're very lucky to have such a rich history.
That's where I'm going to go. So my mentor, I was down on a coaching day with him, and we were talking, this had been Christmas, talking about guests that I was going to put on my podcast, and I'd mentioned you, and he said, "What's Walker's Shortbread?" I said, "Are you fucking real?" I thought, how can you not know what Walker's Shortbread is? And he's from South Shields, and he said, "Honestly, I've never heard of it." I'm like, okay. And then, so I was taken for granted, like it's easy for you to do, same with my business, you take for granted everyone knows where you are. And he said, never heard of it. 2 days later, he was at Newcastle Airport, he sent me a picture, and I went, fuck me, it's everywhere. It's in Dubai Airport. So now he sees it everywhere because he's now aware of it. So that's what's important, isn't it? Is keeping telling that story, because you can go up the high street in Edinburgh, Princes Street, and you see a lot of folks selling shortbread. It looks quite similar to yours, same colour, quite close on the logo. It's not the logo, but it's like, and that's quite difficult for you. You have to, it must be cut hard because it pisses you off. But on the other hand, folk are trying to copy something that's so unique, it's unbelievable,
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think what's important for us to stay true is to our heritage and to our quality. So we're never going to sacrifice on butter. So we are the only, as far as I'm aware, the only UK manufacturer who uses 100% butter in all their products. So there might be other brands that will use, margarine for certain products or certain customers to maintain certain prices. As far as I'm aware, we are the only ones that use 100% butter. And I think it's really about not compromising on that and knowing what we stand for. We are looking at things like we're going through a brand redesign at the moment. So what your mentor would have seen in Newcastle is our new travel retail range, which is only available in the airports, and it's got kind of new logos. And something simple that we did is up until this new branding, we never had an apostrophe in Walkers. It was just always just Walker's Shortbread. But now we are putting an apostrophe in to signify that we are a Walker family. So this is the shortbread of the Walker family, not just a brand name.
Yeah.
So it's something small that actually we never talk about. And I think it's just because we take it for granted and you just kind of go, oh yeah, everyone knows Walkers, whatever. But actually, do they know the whole history? Do they know? So I guess if I sat next to someone in an airplane and you get talking and they say, what do you do? Before I would say, oh, I sell shortbread. I work for a company that sells shortbread. Now I would say I work for a 125-year-old family business that makes the world's best quality shortbread and other products, and I sell it to 18 international markets. Something I'm really proud to do. I think even just that, we're kind of, that sort of humble beginnings is what we have always been taught, and it's really important to us to be humble. But I think also it's to be proud of the business and to make sure that we are telling people at every occasion that we are a family business, and trying to spread more of the story, because I think it is a great heritage which a lot of people would like to have for their brands that they start. We have it, but we just don't talk about it.
It's such an iconic brand, especially when you think how it started and where it is. It's like it's not in the middle of Birmingham or something. You know what I mean? We're up in Aberlour. It's like it's pretty far from anywhere.
That's it. I mean, now if you're building a business and building a factory, I don't think you'd build it in the north of Scotland. You'd build it right where all the people are. But no, we're really lucky to be in a very beautiful area of Scotland. I think it really fits with our brand name and our quality that we are made in the Highlands of Scotland. So, when you eat a piece, if you're in Aviemore down the road, Aberdeen, or in Australia, it's all made in Speyside. So nothing is made externally, nothing's made down south, everything's made in the Highlands of Scotland. Adds challenge, but also what it means for us as a business. And I think comes back to moving to Aberlour of 1,000 people. We employ now 1,500 people, which is wonderful, and we are so indebted to the people of Aberlour and the surrounding area who've really kind of been there for us and for really helping us on our journey. So when we talk about being a 125-year-old family business, almost the Walker family are the smallest family in that. Like, there are so many more families that have played a part in our history. So as part of our celebration early in the month, we had a big family event where we invited all our staff to come, bring their families, and it was a really nice occasion because you see people who whose grandparents work in the factory, or their aunt and uncle working in the office with you, and there's so many family businesses, and we're families within our business. So we are very lucky to have such a dedicated workforce, and it's they sometimes say that in Walkers, if you kick one arse, you kick them all. Because if you offend someone else, they're probably related to someone else.
One family member, you're gonna.
You never know. So you got to be careful because you can say, "Oh."
I'd admit. Yeah. And how's staffing been for you? Is that, like, I know in the hospitality industry at the moment, staffing is a problem. Are you finding that, or is your network within the community kept it strong?
No, we're very much struggling, like a lot of industries at the moment. I think, I guess, put in perspective, at this time of year in the past, we would probably edge up to about 1,800 people through temporary workers, seasonal staff, to get us through the Christmas kind of period rush. And since Brexit, with all the lack of labour, it's been a real struggle. And right now, you're in a position where you need 50 people to come in and work. You maybe get 2-3 applications. So there's just not the same number of people. So it's put a big strain on our production capability. But it also means that you have to then adapt and shift. So, for example, we've had to reduce the number of products we make. So to making sure that we have, it's easier to produce more, and making sure you're focusing on your best selling products. Because, we kind of had spread ourselves maybe slightly thin on occasion. So you're maybe making a pack of shortbread that goes down really well in the north of Scotland, but doesn't maybe quite have the same take across the world. So making sure that when we're producing things, we produce products that are profitable and we can sell really well. We know that we'll sell. And that means that the staff that we have can produce what we're making. So we're not kind of having to try and be everything to everyone.
I remember when we were in Japan, you were telling me, I think at that time you had a tin. It was a tin that you'd had made, and it had like the Union. I know exactly what it was now. You had the Union Jack on it, and it was a British product. And even though you're a Scottish company, you are very British, because being a worldwide product, I know anything with the Scottish flag or tartan is a great seller around the world, especially Japan and Asia. But Britain is quite a strong power. I remember talking to you, and you says the difficulty is, because at the time that's when they were talking about independence, and you said, if they go for independence, we've got all these boxes of shortbread made, and that's a nightmare for us, because all of a sudden that brand's no longer relevant, So that's tricky for you, because you've got to be so far ahead as well, eh?
Yeah, I think, and again, that's probably us trying to make products for every single occasion and every single avenue we could think of. So the Union Jack tin came about for the London Olympics in 2012, and it sold so well that we continued to sell it. But we also released the saltire that we sell on Edinburgh High Street, as you were saying, and we have a host of other ones that followed that have Nessie and Edinburgh Castle and things like that, and Scotty Dogs. So we kind of have always tried to sell as many products as we can, but at the moment, because of the staffing levels, we've had to cut back. So I think it's really on understanding more about the brand, more about the family, and about what we want as a business. I think we're going through a lot of change. We're going through a generational change as a business. So I think it's about articulating internally what we want our brand to be, and that will kind of show itself in the future. But yeah, it's it's amazing to see the appeal of international brands in Japan. You know, they want the authentic thing. They want to know the story about it. So when you were there, you know, you were very kind in saying the queue at ours was long, but our queue would stop because we ran out. We couldn't produce anything. Your queue never stopped. It was just, and they wanted the best fish and chips from the UK. That was it. It wasn't like, and they were prepared to wait an hour and a half. Yeah. And I'll tell you a very funny story because we had some people helping us make the shortbread at the time, and some of the staff from our distributor, and you know, they would all come and do a morning shift, helping me, you know, re-roll the dough and cut it and help with the baking and the labeling. And this guy said to me, you know, he said to his friend, he's going away for 10 minutes, he'll be back. And he went to go to your queue because it was only 10 minutes long. So he's like, I'm going to go now at 10:30 in the morning, because he was like, right, I can see a space. I'm going to run, get some fish and chips. And he came back with fish and chips, and he's put it in his bag. And I went, sorry, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm taking it home to my family. And I said, no, it's fish and chips. You got to eat it now. And he's like, no, I will take it home. I want to share this with my family. I was like, no, fish and chips doesn't taste good in 10 hours. You know, it tastes good warm when it's there. He refused. He refused because he said, I want my family to experience having the UK's best fish and chips. And that was something that he had said. And he was like, and same with the shortbread. He's like, I'm not trying any, I'm taking it home. I will share it with all my family. You know, and what they what they want to experience, the quality that they expect is incredible.
I totally agree with you. It's like the amount of people that were putting it in their bag and they were telling me that they were taking it home. I had this man that used to come to me everywhere. He passed away during COVID actually. His daughter messaged me, and he came to me no matter where I was working in Japan. He always came. I think he was a brain surgeon, and he used to come and he would order 16 fish and chips. Now, I think that they were charging £15 for them. He'd order 16 and he would eat 2 portions, and then he would say, I'm taking these home to my family. But I'm like, but we're in Tokyo, you live in Osaka. Yeah. But he was taking, and it was just crazy. And he would come with like £800 bottles of sake for me. And one time he came and he says, here's 2 bottles. And I said, why? Because I never came to see you last time with a gift and I felt bad, so here's 2. And I'm like, stop, just stop. But it's the way that but it's amazing, isn't it? You know, I say to people when they're going out to Japan, what you've got to do is not go there and think. If you think, you'll wreck the experience, because you cannot fathom what's going on in these people's heads. When you go out to have a meal, you know, everyone's speaking, everyone's interacting. It's an amazing vibe. You know, in the UK, you hear the coffee machine grinding because everyone's on their phones, not speaking to each other. It's just amazing. But they love food. Like when they're eating something, it's all about the taste, the experience, and it's everything, isn't it? You know, it's like the ones that were eating the fish and chips were getting a British beer so they could sit on the step, so they could take a photo of the beer, and it's like unbelievable. You know, it's amazing. You know, but the other thing that there were massive queues for scones, wasn't it? You know, scones was just crazy. They're queuing up for scones and paying a fortune for them. It's like unbelievable. They open the door at 10 o'clock and they all just run in. It's like the January sales in New York, isn't it? And it's that every day.
Exactly. Yeah. We had that experience. Definitely. Sorry, just Callum, there was one evening, and after, I love Japanese food. I could eat that all day, every day. Just my favorite type of cuisine. And there was one middle day, must have been sort of 6 days in for the trip, and I did exactly that. You kindly gave us fish and chips that I didn't have to wait an hour for, and I sat on the steps and drank a Black Isle brewery beer and had your fish and chips, and it was like just refreshed me after being, you know, eating sushi and everything for so many days. But it's such a special occasion. I think it's the respect that they give the food, you know, and they want to know all about it. They want the quality thing. And I think we're very much geared in the UK, and Scotland is very much to kind of sit down, get my money, eat it, and get out of there. You know, I know we're talking more about where your food's from and things, and I think that's something that we need to do more of. But it's really interesting to see that when the Japanese come to dinner, they have dinner. You know, it's not like I'm going to play on my phone. I'm going to, you know, they sit down, they have the whole experience, and they get what they want. So it's a great suggestion to really kind of take it in. Don't think about it. Just got to kind of enjoy it. And I think we could learn a lot from them in a way. There's a lot there.
Well, I was a way to say to you, that was my next question. It just popped up when you were telling me that story, was what did you learn in Japan? Did you learn any lessons?
I think I've been lucky enough to be to Japan, I think 9 times. I've been for a couple of trade shows like we've Baked Fresh, and I've also been for work. And I think it's, obviously their relationships are massive. And it's not even just from a business point of view to sort of say, right, I am going to speak to my counterpart and the relationship that we built. It's the relationship, as you said, with consumers. So a guy who'll come and see you, no matter where you are in Japan, because he values that relationship with you. And whether or not it's financially, you know, it's good for you financially, whatever, it's the fact that he would go out this way to come and see you, no matter where he was, and travel hours on the train to get to you, to meet with you. And probably the fish and chips was separate because his relationship was with you. So I think that is a real key lesson in terms of the value that we put on each other. But also in Japan, for me, it's quality. It's really, that's what they are looking for. So I know from my job, the quality of the product that we need to have. And that goes from the taste of it, to the packaging, to the service, and even the interaction. So the communication needs to be quality. So they won't accept, you know, thanks very much for your order, see you later, whatever. It's, dear Alister, please see attached, blah, 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 blah. Here's this. You know, they're very much formal, but it's everything they do, they put an emphasis on quality. And I think it's really important for me to understand that. So for doing business there, if you don't understand the Japanese mentality, it's very difficult. And we always say when we're launching in new markets or we want to grow in international markets, you have to go to the place to see it, because it doesn't do it justice looking at photos or hearing stories of it. You have to go to the place that you're going to sell. You have to understand the people that are going to buy it and why they're going to buy it. And then you can sort of start to put your own twist on it or focus on the areas that you want to, but you have to get the grasp of the market first, is basically.
That's a really good point, that, because the photo doesn't do it justice, because like I learned so much from every trip I've gone out there now, and I think I've done 10 trips, I think. But every time I've been out there, I come home so excited, and come home passionate about my going back at work, because I've got so much enthusiasm, because they're very enthusiastic. But I was really scared because they'd never had fish and chips at the Hankyu department store. So I took over from Savoy. Savoy used to do the food. So they said, will you do it? And I'm like, oh, of course I'll do it. But it was like, oh, this I was shitting myself, you know. Oh, well, we'll get by. I arrived in Fukuoka and no one spoke English. No one. So I was having to show them, like, put the chips in the box, put the fish, I'll do all the cooking, trying to explain to them. And at the end of the day, I looked at the take-ins and I'm like, how the hell have we made that much money without speaking English? And these folk have never done this job before. And I worry when someone phones in sick. You think, oh, we're not going to manage today. Well, how can I manage in a foreign country for the first time and produce that much product? So you start thinking, it's your mind playing tricks with you. You know, you can easy manage. There's always a way to do it. But attention to detail, so the customer service is amazing. You know, blows you away, you know. And I thought, if we come home, it's like you walk into a restaurant and they all shout welcome. And when you're leaving, they all shout bye. And being British, it's like, whew, that's a bit in your face, but you get used to it. And I thought, if I can come back and do 10% of what they do, I'm streets ahead of everyone, because it's off the scale. You know, some things are wrong. So like you could go and buy a scone and they'll put it in the most beautiful bag. So they'll waste so much packaging, but they give you another bag as well in case this one's get crumpled and you're giving it as a gift. It's But that's quite good attention to detail. It's like what you're saying. It's like off the scale. Okay, there's a bit of waste in there, but that is about the experience. So when you come home with your gift, you can package it nice again to give to the person. It's unbelievable what you learn out there and you take back is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it does make you think when people come to this country, the experience they must feel, it's like...
Yeah. You think about coming into, people coming in and ordering whatever from a restaurant and getting, a grunt back or whatever. It's really difficult, in the Japanese way. But there's lots to learn, isn't there? I think for us, the quality in the presentation, if you buy exactly that gift, and if when you buy the gift, it's already wrapped, but they give you a display one to see what's exactly inside, so that when you get home, you can go, oh, here you go, Auntie, I bought you this individually wrapped cookies set, but you've seen it with your eyes because they have a displayed one, but you've got it all neatly wrapped, like you've planned it. The best customer I've ever had in Japan, I shouldn't say best, one of our great customers in Japan, which sadly I think has been affected by COVID and some of the downturn, was travel company called JTB, and they used to don't think they do it anymore, but when you book a travel holiday, so it's a travel agency, book a holiday, Callum goes to London. When you book your holiday, you get sent a brochure, and in the brochure is all the souvenirs that you can buy in London, and you pre-buy your souvenirs, and it gets sent to your house before you go, so that when you go there, you don't, because Japanese don't get any holidays, so they only get like maybe 2 weeks holiday a year or something. So they want to make most of their time. So why go to London and spend hours going around all the shops to buy earrings, Walker's Shortbread, Twinings tea, all these sorts of things? They get them delivered, and then so when they get home, they go, "Hello, Auntie, I brought you some Walker's Shortbread." But meanwhile, it just got delivered from down the road, and then they just kept it in their house until they get back, which is genius.
Off the scale, but it's so clever, isn't it?
I love that.
But until you meet these people, though, you would think that's stupid. But when you meet them, they are so efficient. It's unbelievable. It's like efficiency is crazy. So, talking about COVID did bound to have, that must have been a problematic as it was for everyone. Did that really hurt you bad?
Yeah, absolutely. Similar to the problems, staffing levels, concern. Obviously, I mentioned around the importance of our staff to our business. So we shut for a couple of weeks to kind of make sure all our procedures and our everything was fine for people to work. That was a kind of initial impact. But it's kind of like for us, and we had a massive downturn. Obviously, the airport shut, and that's a big part of our business. But other areas grew, such as kind of supermarket business. As you know, people shop more online, or Amazon grew, and all those sorts of things. So just the kind of usual stuff. But it's kind of almost the hangover it now that's causing more problems. So it's everything being out of kilter. So I was listening to a talk by one of our customers, and he talked about the supply algorithm and how everything before COVID was in tune. So everything worked perfectly. The flow of containers coming in to bring stock, let's just say, for example, and this is shortbread, and the way that the deliveries were made and the rate of sale, it was all calculated and all was in perfect sync. And then COVID just kind of disrupted it massively, and the knock-on impact we've never got back to that perfect algorithm that everything flows gently. So container cost is the easiest one to is a good example, because when COVID hit and all the containers that were coming from China or moving around the world all kind of got stagnated, and lots of goods were coming from China into the UK or over to America with supply goods or PPE or whatever it was. The cost of a container to get from China to the UK went up. It used to be £2,000 a container, and it went up to about £22,000 a container, because there just was not enough of them. So containers were being sent back from the UK to China empty, just to bring it back because they got a better price for it than they would sending it to the US. So even just on that basis, and then same with the US, it used to be about £3,000, £4,000 a container and it went up to about 10, 12, even more thousand. And it's things like that I think that consumers don't always realize. But some of the shipping companies were making billions in profits, and yet all our costs are going up and up and up. And what I found interesting was that there were no relationships. So going back to that point around Japan and trust and how to like work and have that quality of kind of everything. There were instances where I heard stories that if I booked a container to go to X country, and I'd pay £10,000 for it, if someone down the road said, I'll give you 12,000, they would kick me off and put this one on for 12,000 because they'd rather make more money. So we've got some great partners now, and I'm really lucky with some of the work that we've been doing. But that's a good example of how out of kilter everything became. And so the import cost of bringing tins in or bringing goods in, and then to sort of recycle it and send it out into other markets has been quite a challenge for us. Yeah, but COVID absolutely has impacted us. And it still continues to do so. It feels like it is just a massive hangover.
The crazy thing with like the container cost, so this is what the Joe public don't understand. So like, say for instance, it went up to £20,000. But what you've got to remember is, it's biscuits you're selling. So there's a price cap, isn't there? You can only sell the product for so much. You can't say, oh well, that packet of biscuits is going from £1 to £10 because it's got, there's a fine line. So, but the companies had to absorb so much of that, didn't they? It's like it was more about survival than making money, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And if we think about the history of Walkers and how I said we went through most difficult times during the war at the time. Now we often say that 21, 22, 23 are the most difficult years we've ever been through as a company. So my dad, who's worked in the business for close to 60 years, this is his most difficult time that he's been through. So as a family member, as someone working in the business, trying to, have my turn and work in the business, it's a much more difficult time than I kind of maybe imagined it had been in the past.
I thought this when you were telling me there at the start about the during the war, and that was the toughest time. And I actually thought, I wonder if COVID would have been pretty similar to that, in all honesty, because like you couldn't get product. One of the things I was thinking about costings and stuff, like with probably Brexit, that must have affected you. Butter, because that's a predominant, and you said about butter and you don't substitute for margarine, but the cost of butter just now is colossal. So your costings must have really taken a serious hit.
Yep. Yeah, it absolutely has. And I think there's not much to say because it's butter is 30% of the ingredients, but it's the majority of the cost. So, flour might have gone up in price, but butter is always seemed to be cyclical. And the other thing is that people who see often refer to the spot price of butter. So yeah, if I went out today and bought a ton of butter, this is what it would cost. But we can't go at spot. We need to forward contract and forecast what we're going to need. So we buy further in advance. So you don't always get the same price as what the spot is. So it is a really difficult thing because you're right. We don't want to sacrifice in quality, and we could go to margarine tomorrow, but it wouldn't taste the same and it won't be what we stand for. So we are prepared to pay that because we believe that we want people to have the best quality. And that comes with having the best quality butter. And I think also it's even not all butter is equal, right? So you go to America, the butter in America always tends to be a lot more lighter colored. It doesn't look like the butter you open up here. So again, the butter we buy is very high quality, and we're not willing to kind of sacrifice that for. But yeah, absolutely, what's gone up in price. But I think the thing is for us and for everyone is that if butter goes up in a year, and it might have done, say, in 2015, it might have gone up, we can adapt our prices, everyone understands that. When you've got butter going up, sugar, flour, electricity, labour, gas, containers, stationery, everything else has come up in price. And I think that's what made it even more difficult, is that there is every justification for a price increase. But to your point, would someone pay £10 for a pack of biscuits? Probably not. You know,
They would in Japan, but they wouldn't
maybe,
anywhere else.
maybe, yeah.
You know,
So yeah,
but no, it's totally true. Like, there's a price point on everything, you know, and it's like we're quite lucky where we are because it's quite an affluent area. So I can justify still buying, like you, buying the good fish, buying the best packaging, you know, getting everything the best I can get. Whereas, like, there's shops down south and they're nearly half the price of me, but they're buying rubbish, you know. But it's not because they want to buy that, it's because the area they live in wouldn't spend £10 on a fish and chips. You know, it's a difficult thing, you know, and that is easier for me because I'm controlling the area I'm in. Your product is going to areas, isn't it? So it's like you've got to be price sensitive for all them areas, not just for Aberlour, you know?
and nowadays, maybe less so for you, but like for us, it's people can go on the internet now. You can log on to Amazon USA and see Walker Shortbread is this price. All right. And you may not ship it to you, but you can see the price, you can compare the price, you can find other sources. You know, it's now people will buy stuff and resell it on Amazon. So they can go into the supermarket, buy it at a low price and send it into markets. And we have that problem with us, right? If something's on a particular price point, they can go and buy it and sell it into Japan if they want. But, you know, it's just about us taking control of it and making sure that they understand that what they get from us is the quality and dealing with us and everything. So it's been a really difficult couple of years, and no shortage of issues.
So, back onto family, did you always want to get into the business from a young age, or was it something that just happened?
I would say I think I always knew I was going to go into the business. I had my rebellious streak, you know, sort of 15 to 18, where I was like, no, I'm not going to work there. But in the end, I did. I went to university and studied marketing, and then I sort of joined the business, working in the factory. So my first job was my first official job. I'd worked the summers as in the shop, in the factory, and dispatch, whatever. But my first job was making shortbread, starting at 5 a.m. and finishing at lunchtime. So that was graft, understanding the process from the beginning. Spent a year, 6 months to sort of 8 months doing that, and then went away for a year to live in Canada to learn our business there and to learn how international business works, and then kind of came back and joined our international team. So I think I knew I was going to join the business. It wasn't always a given, but I think I just didn't know which part or which area. I knew it was kind of sales. I quite like that. I like chatting to people, but it kind of manifests itself into international sales. So it's been, I wouldn't say I knew I was destined to be here from day one, but I think I was pretty clear with my mind I would end up here.
And was there a lot of peer pressure to join the company, or
Yes.
was parents pretty? I thought so.
Yeah,
but, the funny thing is, if you accelerate another 10 years onto you, and you got children, and you would be like, nah, they don't have to do it. But then you would be like, you'd be a fool not to be joining this because it's such a fantastic business. Imagine you were the black sheep of the family and you didn't come in now. It would get quite resentful, wouldn't it? Family people would, they would stop speaking to each other and everything. But I wondered if there was family pressure. That's a tough call, that, eh?
Yeah, and I think what made it difficult for me was I'm the youngest of four, and the first three all went off and did what they wanted. So I think when it came to me, they were like, you better come in here now. You've run out of time. I don't have time to now wait for these three to come back and do it. So I think you should probably join. But it's good. I think the way I look at it is, if everyone had the same experience and joined as a family member, if everyone had the same experience and joined, we'd all have the same outlook. So if we all went to university and studied business, if we all went and worked for Coca-Cola as an example, and we all went to work for Mars and then joined the business, I feel like we'd have a very clear look. But what's good about our business is I think everyone's got different routes into the business. So I've maybe started from day one, basically working here. Nikki, our managing director, had a completely different career before, and then kind of started and worked his way up. My sister went out and got experience in different environments and then came in. So we've all got kind of very different skill sets, different outlooks, and I think that's what makes it a better rounded view of the business rather than us all being like corporate beasts that had kind of gone through the same process, if that makes sense.
So have they all come into the business now?
More or less, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And what do you think the advantage of this big family business is?
I think it's my main thing I think is taking a long-term view, so we don't have to make decisions like let's say a public limited company, for profit. The shareholders aren't out for blood to make their money and get out of there. We are taking a long-term view. So if we can say to the shareholders or the business, this is what we want to do, it might take us 10 years to get there. We can say, yes, we understand because we want to get there and we'll go with you on the journey. We might sacrifice this, and this. But as a family business, you want your family business to be around in the future. You want it to be doing well, and you still want it to be all the things it is today. So an important employer in the area, it looks after a lot of livelihoods and the local community. All those things you want to keep, and we can take that long-term view. So we're not trying to make a quick fix and make a quick buck. It's about sustainability and making us last another 125 years.
And what's the disadvantage? Here you go. Here comes out a list.
Don't think we have time. No, I think the disadvantage. There's honestly not many disadvantages, and I say that very openly. I think, if I was completely honest, when your name is on the box or on the door, you have a vested interest to know what's going on. And same with you, like as a business owner, you want to know a lot of what's going on. And I think it's just making sure that, as one disadvantage may mean that because there's family members there, people want to know a lot of the detail, and we need to kind of let a bit of empowerment, a little bit of sort of let's move forward and give a little trust to some of our staff. I think sometimes there's a tendency to hold on to things or hold on to not to hold on to things, but just want to know all the detail. And sometimes it's like, they've got it, you just need to keep doing this, So it's about trying to empower people and make them accountable, and get them to buy into the vision as a family that you have for your business. So I think that's kind of, it's not very a disadvantage, but it's one of the challenges.
Yeah, that's kind of what Forked Up is. So like, I'm teaching all my clients about setting goals and working your way to get to the goals, but putting leverage on it. So what's the goal for once you've dropped the ego? Because the ego's got to come out of the equation. Otherwise, it's not really for the right reason. But it's all about goal setting and vision, and it's so important because if you're clear with the goal setting and vision, like you guys have to be, especially with a collective amount of family members, it makes it a very powerful tool. If it's working, it's powerful. Who's been the most important professional mentor you've had?
I mean, it's a cliche, isn't it? But probably my dad, in a way, because he's both my boss and my dad. But I think, so Jim started, I think he was 18. He came into the business, and he has really kind of perfected I see him as the kind of the ultimate salesman in a way. He really has kind of sort of set himself above a lot of other people. I think that he, in my mind, I just think he has a very clear way of doing things. He knows exactly how he wants to behave, what he expects of his staff to behave in terms of dealing with customers. So quite Japanese in a way. He's got that same sort of mentality, but really, focusing on he draws me the salesman's triangle on more than one occasion, which is, drawing a triangle upside down and writing you, us, I, as in we talk about you more than we talk about us, and then we talk about us more than talk about I. So there's no I did this, I did that. It's all about you had a wonderful sales result and we want to work together. And it's all about making those long-term partnerships. So I think he's been kind of the biggest inspiration to me, obviously, and he was knighted last year for his services to the industry and stuff. So, to see, again, a small family business that in 1960 had one shop and 16 employees, to kind of go from that to being £140 million business with my father knighted, and my late Uncle Joe was also honoured in the honours list, as was my aunt Marjorie. So I think it's an amazing, again, just being from such a small area of Scotland, to kind of punch above our weight and get to be a global icon. I think is amazing. Now, we're not a global icon in every sense of the word, but we're working on it.
To be honest, you're not far off it. But you're really right about your dad, though. Well, all your family, to be honest, all your aunties and uncles, but your dad is well respected in the Scottish industry. All businesses, but in food and drink sector, it's not. You never hear a bad word about your family. For such a long-serving company, you don't hear bad words, which is pretty amazing.
That's
because,
very kind.
As you know yourself, when you're at the top, there's loads of people normally want to try and knock you down a peg or two, but you don't. From my perception, I don't ever hear it. You don't see it. It's a strong network, and it's powerful.
Yeah, I think we've always been taught, and Nikki, our managing director, often talks about hard work and humility as major parts of our ethos, and I think that's absolutely true. What we've all been brought up with. We do talk. We want to be humble. We are so proud of what we've done, but there's more to do. We want to be. We want to continue what we've done and continue to be family owned and run. So we're very proud of it. And one of the things that Jim said to me, he says this often, is that you should act like a number two, trying to be number one. It's never you are number one and that's it, and you rest on your laurels. It's you've got to be hungry. You've got to have a bit of hustle. You've got to kind of always be aiming to go further, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great bit of advice, really, because in my Forked Up and with the coach that I've got for business, one of the things he always says is you've got to mix with people better than you, because otherwise you lower your levels to the level of the people. So if your friend network is scabby, you're going to lower your level when you're with them, and that's the wrong thing. You need to be aiming high. So for me, I went into this coaching with my coach, but he's got an elite thing where there's 15 of us, 15 business from all over the world that are in this. But I needed to be in that because these people aspire. I aspire to be these people and around these people. So it's that same mentality, be the number two, aiming to be number one. Because if you're number one, you lose the hunger. You get complacent. And when you start getting like that, it's a dangerous game.
Yeah, I think it's important to...
If you could give yourself... Sorry, on you go.
No, go. You're good.
I was going to say, if you could give your 18-year-old self a bit of advice now, if you could look back, what would it be?
I was going to say go and get another job somewhere else after I had to go straight into the business. But no, I think it's being understanding more about you and being true to yourself. So what are your goals? What are your aspirations? But what are your qualities? A bit like your culture. When we as a business, you talk about your culture, your values. What are those for your person, individually, and then making sure that then they are being applied to your everyday life. Because I think you can be shaped by other external factors, and I think it's really what do you stand for as a person. And then it's kind of I listened to a talk once, and this lady said, "What is your unfair advantage?" And I was like, "I don't what." And basically, she's described it as everyone's got an unfair advantage. We talk too much about your negatives and going, "I need to fix this because I'm not good enough at it." She's like, "What's your unfair advantage over everyone else in this room? Because you'll have something that you're better at. You just don't know what it is yet." And I think that's the other thing, is that I spent a lot of time as an 18-year-old probably thinking why I couldn't do stuff, like I'm not very strong at this, or this, rather than focusing on what I'm really good at and then really driving that further. And I think at school you are sort of taught around, your grading and get better at this, and your feedback is always to improve these things of your life. Never like, you've done amazing at this, really go for that. What could you do with that information or that skill set and go and do this, not just sort of, you need to work harder at maths, or your poetry and English is not so good. It's like, what are you actually brilliant at, and where could that skill set be used, rather than kind of just going, yeah, work on those things, you'll get better.
It's very powerful, that, and it's very true. Like schooling for me was a disaster. And folks say to me, "What one bit of advice, if you look back, did you not take?" And it was everyone saying to me, "If you don't stick in at school, you'll not do nothing." Well, I didn't stick in at school. I'm doing okay now.
Yeah.
And it's exactly that ethos. Okay, what do you read books, do you, or podcasts or audiobooks?
Not as much as I should. I do read, but where I center on reading are try not to do too much of it, because I think when I go to bed and I read these types of books, which I'll explain, I think about work too much. So I'm trying to eke my way away from these books and focus on ones that are just easy to read. But I read a lot of brand books, so I'm very interested in the story of a brand being built and where it gets to. So the best one by far is Shoe Dog, which is the story of Nike, which I highly, highly recommend. It's also a movie. Sorry, I think we lost each other. It's okay. It's also a movie in I think it's on Amazon at the moment. That's about when they got Michael Jordan to wear Nike Airs and that whole story. But the whole Nike story is absolutely incredible, and it's an amazing book. So I highly recommend that. I've also read the book around McDonald's, so I like kind of really how these things start, how they go from nothing to everything. And that was kind of interesting. Again, the main point in the McDonald's one was around them realizing they're not selling burgers. It was about real estate and buying the sites and everything like there. But going back to the kind of those original founders and their ethos in terms of, how they set things up and how they did things. So yeah, I read not a lot, but when I do, I get really into it.
See, I didn't used to read at all, because being dyslexic, it didn't appeal to me. I could read a book. I'd read 2 books prior, and it was like Gordon Ramsay's autobiography and Sting's autobiography. I quite like reading how people have become. But the problem with being dyslexic is you read it, but you don't take much of it in, because the concentration is that much on the reading. But in the past year and a half, I've got into Audible books. Holy hell, the amount of Audible books I've listened to is unbelievable. But a lot of it's developing books, so it's a bit like what you're reading. It's about how things can grow, or how you can tap into the inner you to make a better version of yourself and that. And one of the books, and it was Russell Kane, the comedian, was doing a talk for him, an event I was at, and he said to read Black Box Thinking. And I thought, okay, I'll download that. That is an amazing book. Learning about the mistakes, and about how actually the mistakes are the best part. That's where you learn everything. You don't learn from success, you learn from mistakes and how to deal with it. And I thought, really is unbelievable. And I think once you start, you don't realise how much you can learn by listening to something in the car, in your spare time. Well, as you know, I've done that Cape Wrath Trail hike, the 370 kilometres. And I'd done it on my own. It was in memory of my old shipmate who died of cancer earlier in the year. And when I was in, I think it was Kinloch U, and I went and bought a pack of shortbread from the garage, because I was waiting to have a tough tough hike. I thought I'm going to get something that's going to give me some energy today, and I seen a packet of shortbread, and I thought, oh, I know it weighs a bit, but that's what I'm needing. Put it in my hip belt, and I went away to this lock-in, and I sat and had the shortbread, and I tell you what, I remember looking at it thinking, I need to contact Alister and need to do this podcast.
Yeah.
But I tell you, a few sticks of that, I think I had half a packet of it. I was away running up that hill.
Yeah. I remember we saw Mark Beaumont, who cycled down America, and he found shortbread when he was cycling. Because obviously he was cycling hundreds of kilometers a day, and he talked about getting the calories in, and he found a packet of shortbread and ate the whole packet. And I was like, perfect. Maybe we should just rebrand to being focused for cyclists doing long distance cycling. Get as many calories as you can in one go.
Oh man!
But thanks for the support.
Tell you, for sure, definitely. So, Alister, it has been a pleasure. Do you want to ask? Is there a question you'd have liked me to ask you?
No, that was tough enough as it is.
No.
I really enjoyed chatting, Callum. I think I have a lot of admiration for what you've done. I think I love your story of your brand and what you've achieved. I think it's amazing. So it's been great to be on here. I just want to know when you're going to open the next 100 shops and go from there.
Nah, I think it's better having one and one good one than having a load of little ones with loads of problems.
I agree.
So you know what though? I think it's like that diversity. So like having the Bay batter mix, having the Bay fish cakes, and having them going around like Compass Group and stuff, and the Bay on the Road, and then now Forked Up. So Forked Up it's a great business because it's controlled. There's not much commodities that's going to like change what I'm doing. I'm in control of it, and I'm loving it. It's making it quite refreshing for me, even putting it back into my own business. So it's just about. I think it's about enjoying what you do. That's a key thing. If you don't like what you do, change it. Simple. That's it.
I agree.
Anyway, Alister, thank you very much. It's been much appreciated. Keep up what you're doing. Because it's a fantastic brand, a fantastic company that is a total icon, to be honest. You go on about Nike and that, in my eyes, Walker Shortbread is up there with Nike in its own rights. You can't eat a pair of Nikes, but you can eat shortbread.
Yeah, that would not be a tasty treat halfway up a mountain for sure. A pair of Nikes, but no, thank you. That's very kind, and I'm very lucky to be here and talking about it as a family member, but it's nothing compared to the effort and the work by so many people in our team, in our company. Something like 1,500 people who all work tirelessly for us, as a family, and we are eternally grateful to them. And as I said, you have to do what you love doing, and I love doing this because I want to do it for this business, for the people, for the community. We're very proud of the brand, but we're very proud of everything that goes into that. So thanks very much for taking the time to listen and hear more about our business.
Thank you. Cheers, buddy.
All right, cheers.